All right, so welcome to the December Bang Forum. We've got some really exciting content for you, so I'm going to try to breeze through my little introduction as quick as I can so I can get you handed off to our wonderful speakers for the day, and we can get straight into their content as quick as possible. The main update that I have for you from the Bang planning team is that just like previous years, if you've been around with us for a while, we will be releasing a survey with our January newsletter just to check in with all of you on how we're doing, things that we might be able to improve about how Bang is running, and what speakers we're bringing in and topics and things like that. So please look for that survey in the January newsletter, and please respond when you get it. And with that, I will jump straight into introducing our speakers for the day. So we have Abe and Michael from Microsoft, and they're going to talk to us today about how we can use Power BI as BAs and how we can use that as a tool in our BAs. And I won't read their bios for you. Hopefully you saw those in the November newsletter and read them on your own time anyway. And I'm sure they'll take a moment to introduce themselves and tell you why they're the ones speaking with us today. So with that, I will hand off the sharing. Abe and Michael, whichever one of you is going to be running the sharing, and you guys can take it from here.
Thank you so much. I'll go first, Michael, and then hand to you. Thank you, everyone, for having us. Thank you, forum members. Pleasure to be here. My name is Abe Yoakum. I'm the state of Oregon and Idaho's account technology strategist. I live in Salem. I've been at Microsoft over 10 years now, and before that, I used to work for, as my bio said, state police and lottery. Was there for quite a long time. So been around state government my whole career. Pleasure to be here and meet with you today. And excited to talk to you about Power BI, and you'll hear from our fearless leader now, our main attraction, Michael Cruz. And Michael, if you want to introduce yourself, go for it.
Hey folks, I'm Michael Cruz. Thanks, Abe, and thanks, Tim. We're pleased to be with you today with the group to talk about Power BI. I'm privileged to have worked for Microsoft for the last 10 years talking about Power BI, as well as a lot of the rest of our data and AI capabilities. And prior to that, 10 years ago, I worked for a government agency here in Washington State. You might see some Seattle paraphernalia behind me. So, I love government, and I love, figuring out how to make the stuff that Microsoft makes work for government. And so that's what I'd like to talk about today, is learning a little bit more from a BA perspective about Power BI. And so I've made a lot of assumptions based off of other conversations I've had, similar conversations across the country about Power BI. And so I presented that to you, but that said, please do chime in with questions in the chat. I know we're monitoring the chat, or if there's too many, we might have to save some for the end. But either way, let's make this as interactive as possible, because I'd like to make this as educational as possible. So part of that would be, Power BI. Where does that fit in with the rest of the things that you might be dealing with from Microsoft? Power BI is an analytics tool. It is one of the very popular ones, but it is just one piece of the Power Platform. So you probably heard of Power Apps, a place to do low code, no code, some Power Automation and Power Virtual Agents, all riding on top of a bunch of connectors and common data across the board. Of course, we're working with Power BI today. We're going to talk specifically about Power BI, but I just wanted you to see where this fits in terms of the other things that you might be doing with the Power Platform. Now, Power BI, when you dive a little bit deeper into it, it's made up of a few different flavors as well. So Power BI, when you hear it, you might know it as the tool that you download, right? And that tool that folks can download, it's a free tool to download and author reports. That's Power BI Desktop. Okay, where most of state, most of Oregon has licenses to use the next tier, which is Power BI Pro. That's going to be our cloud-based offering, where anything you create inside of Power BI Desktop gets published out to the internal site for Oregon, for the department and other use cases that we'll go dive deeper into. And then there's other pieces like our Power BI Premium, and then an on-premises thing for Power BI Report Server. Like that's very that doesn't happen. Those are anomalies for the Power BI server or Power BI embedded, but you should be aware that if you hear the term Power BI, that you got to know where that counts, or which kind of Power BI are we talking about, which flavor. All right, so that is just a glance of the portfolio. Diving deeper into the portfolio, what is Power BI used for? In its essence, it's used to connect to data, wherever that data might be, on-prem or in the cloud, shape that data, right? Gather that data together, make it better for consumption, and then, publishing that view out to our end users, our citizens, our executives, our work group members, right? Whoever that audience might be, via a bunch of different modalities. So, if I try to equate this for anyone who's been in IT for a while, right, this is where Excel used to be big in, right? It's actually, Excel is still the #1 BI tool in the world, because it's where people can connect to data via whatever way they want to, cutting and pasting, using VLOOKUPs, using, different techniques to get data into Excel. And then, sorting that out, creating pivot tables, creating charts, creating just spreadsheets and publishing that out, whether that be, an email or USB keys or some other way. The idea behind Power BI is to take all that great goodness of, bringing data in together, shaping it and publishing it into a much more cohesive, collaborative thing, right? And so it's not new in terms of what it accomplishes. It is just new in the way that it accomplishes it. All right. So you see here some of the stuff inside. It's Excel's really tough to keep secure, compliant, and enterprise grade. In this case, if anyone's tried to open one up, a big Excel spreadsheet with all sorts of charts and graphs, and know that it takes 5 minutes sometimes to open up, that's the performance side of things, to keep it in enterprise grade that Power BI covers, while of course maintaining all of our sensitive labels, our classifications of data and government and everything else maintained. And then of course, we want to do more innovative things within there, and I'll get into some of that fun stuff when I do some of the demonstrations. But hopefully this, for me, this was a great, just at a glance, way to consume the concept of what the heck is Power BI? Well, it's this, right? Now, what can it connect to in terms of the types of data that you're seeing on the left? That's where this slide kind of covers it. Please don't try to read all of these. It's just to say that, look, if there's not a connector for it already, there's a very high likelihood that we have a connector for it. If there's not a connector, then it's very likely that you'll see here there's some that are saying beta, right? That it's in development already and that it'll be there. So gone are the days of, waiting forever for the most popular connector to occur, to connect to and make it a rich connection. This is now just commonplace, where you see a new type of data source come out there on the web or otherwise, and very soon that we publish then, based off of votes from you and other users, the millions of users in Power BI, that's what they end up creating next, as far as connectors go. And if we don't have one, there's also these generic ones for doing types of text or JSON or API consumptions. So that's a real popular one too, is just consuming over new APIs from different web services that are coming out there. There's a way to do that. Now, for my friends out there and users that are there that are listening about this, the BAs that are out there thinking, oh my gosh, that's a lot to manage. Yes, this is, right? There's a lot that you can do with this. It's a very powerful tool. We're talking about a lot of sources. So there's a good side of that, but then there's also the challenges of maintaining a tool, or keeping in mind a tool that can do all these things. So I guess it's that balance that we have, right, as BAs, of making sure that you're aware of what this thing is capable of doing, and advising others of which ones they want to use, while also saying, hey, look, we can probably do some things outside of the box with Power BI, right? That are really innovative and things like that. But also there's a way that you can use this in a way that can be very controlled also. Because why I bring this up is that I've been there where Excel, right, has been used to do all sorts of crazy things. And it's been super satisfactory for the folks that they serve, the audiences that they serve. But boy, it becomes difficult to sustain and improve on or maintain. So keep in mind that these challenges that I'm talking about, it's a balance between that functionality with the challenges that are out there to make this happen. We've tried at Microsoft to include all those perspectives of all the different types of challenges. And so, whether you're doing this from an end-to-end, end user to end user, or analyst to end user, like we're trying to keep all those perspectives in place. It's not by no means perfect yet, but it's really darn close from the last, I don't know, 6-7 years that it's been out now. So do know that we're not that we hear it, right? So the feedback that you might be having as far as, hey, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, please do provide those feedback to me, as well as through the tool. The tool itself has a place for you to provide that feedback, but also be vocal to us about things that it should be doing better. All right, because that's the only way that it becomes better. Yeah, go ahead, Abe.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. So just a couple of intersections here. Michael's absolutely right. This idea that there's a community-driven feedback model and loop. This team that builds this service is very acute to being able to respond to it. Sometimes changes are hard, but we're building a community-driven solution that allows people to like influence the direction where this goes, and especially when groups of people have similar interests, you can see the power of the community of posting an idea and saying, hey, I need something more from this tool, and you see people saying, yeah, we need this. We prioritize that stuff. Your feedback matters. I also wanted to just come in and pop in just real quick and pause. Just being able to visualize data, being able to connect, being able to do all these things that we're talking about. Does this resonate with you? Do you have needs in your organizations? Do you have questions about what we've talked about so far? And everyone, somebody, if you'd like to raise your hand, we'd love to hear back from you too. Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Abe. And yeah, do come up with formulate those questions for later in the conversation. I'm sure you'll have more of them. We're happy to answer. Now, we'll be sending the slide deck out, so you'll be able to look deeper into these visualization challenges. But that said, like I was talking about the history, it's been a great journey for this product. It is now the leader in terms of how Gartner sees it for BI and analytics platforms. This has been an interesting view. It has to do with all that content or all that feedback that we get from our users. So please do keep that coming. We're proud to say that it's also, it's not just Gartner that sees it that way. It's a great tool for enterprise BI. And what's great for Oregon is that many of you, your agencies and departments already own it. So it's just a matter of leveraging it today. Versus some, if you don't own it, we can have those conversations. But it's a lot of times just being able to leverage or harness these types of tools from Microsoft. So this session, as well as any other that we want to have, can help you just get that value of a service that you already own. Now, this piece really of Power BI is kind of just one component of a larger thing. Now, don't get me wrong, when you see this spaghetti of things of data governance, analytics, and operational databases, the reality is that you could do a lot of this inside of Power BI, right? So being able to connect the data, like we were talking about, shape that data, and then perform analyses or reporting off of, and maintain data governance, security, and otherwise in that data. It's built into the tool. But the reality is, sometimes that tool, there's even at the end of the day when we're using Power BI to publish and create these reports, that sometimes we need a little bit even more of enterprise grade. So I just want you to be cognizant of that. Power BI fits. You'll see here it's a portion of the entire platform. Again, you don't need all these things. You probably, like I said, get started with Power BI, but just do know you have that next step of other things that you can count on to get you what you need to, if anyone is from a BA perspective looking to do anything beyond reporting, right? So Power BI is a great visualization reporting tool, but you know what? We need other things. Well, we can have those additional conversations that show that off. Okay. In order to provide more perspective, I figured let me do a demonstration before I talk about what those different patterns are to store data and can't keep data going. I'm gonna just share my screen, and that way we can talk about what the heck we even do with the Power BI to begin with. What would someone to step up to their computer first encounter when it comes to Power BI? And let me do a little sliding around here. Okay, so this is the first screen that you would see using Power BI Desktop. Again, a free download. You would just grab it from probably the source of your department and or directly from the internet. And the idea here is to say, hey, look, we landed on the Power BI Desktop. What do I want to do? Well, I can get data. I can rely on recent sources. I can open up certain things. I could look at, we'll see what's new, right? Other get started videos to say, hey, what are the concepts around this? But we add things to this, we add the things to this product and service all the time. So you want to keep up to date with what's new as well. I'll take a tutorial. So everything on this page is actually what I'm going to cover, just in more verbose fashion. So feel free to get it directly from these sources. Now I'm just going to hit the close button and go into this this canvas. I call it a canvas because the right side is sort of my paint, and the middle of this report, this screen is my canvas where I want to paint create whatever picture I want to. And so I could grab data from Excel, SQL Server. Matter of fact, I'll just show you that real quick. You saw that screenshot or that slide that talked about all the different things that you can grab data from. This is a quick glance of what I can actually connect to. So I have those file sources like Excel, text files, XML. I've got databases that I can connect to with the connections that I want, native connections. Remember I was talking about Power Platform, so I can connect directly to other things in Power Platform, including that low-code, no-code environment in Power Apps. Azure sources like tables and other things, online services like Dynamics or Salesforce or Google or Analytics and everything else. I love this because 10 years ago when I started doing this, we didn't have all these other connections to all these different groups of things. And so I just love it. Whatever you might have, we probably have a connector for it. So then there's, of course, everything else, like just grabbing tables right off of Wikipedia or something like that off a website. That's always a fun one. Anyway, this is where you would start. In my case, for this demo, I'm just going to connect to some CSV files that I grabbed from actually the Oregon Open Data site. So I grabbed a couple data sets. I didn't want to anger anyone that might be on the call, so let's by opening up the can of worms of more data. Well, this is all open data, so it's all open data. Great. But here we are. I grabbed consumer complaints. For anyone who's curious to see what that looks like, this is kind of a sample of that data, right? So it's good data. It's got the status of the call. It's got 18,000 rows of data. So I wanted to get something that was a little larger. The date open, date closed, the respondent, as well as some narrative around the complaint and the location, description, so on. So anyway, of course, I'm sure as good BAs, you know that I could go into here and start creating charts out of here, right? So I could insert a pivot chart or insert some other things. Like I said, Excel's really good at this still. But in my case, I want to do something a little bit more flashy with it. So I'm going to grab this data, the CSV data. I'm going to double click on it. And what it's going to do is it's going to connect to this data set and actually ingest it. It's going to grab a copy of this CSV. So I'm not actually I'm not changing any of the source data. What I'm doing is I'm taking a copy of it and bringing it right into Power BI. Now you might be wondering, well, when I'm dealing with multi-million rows of data, like, isn't that going to affect performance? Yes, of course, there's a limit to it, but what's great about Power BI, there's a big performant engine in the back end of this that allows you to deal with huge data sets. In this case, it's not huge. It's only 18,000 rows, but I've yet to see it where any government data set has crashed Power BI. Now, of course, I'm sure someone will be able to find one, but there's some ways around that too. Anyway, the first thing that I would do with after I connect to this data is I want to clean this data up a little bit. I want to shape it. You'll see here there's a little bar up here that says it's blank. There's not so much in the address cases. It might be because they're not capturing that. It's not a required field inside of the form, web form, wherever they're capturing this for. So I can just kind of quickly profile the data and see what kind of data I have in here. In this column, the business type, I'm glad to say that it's 99% filled. There's only one empty. And so, in fact, I can go in here and just remove the empty of that, so I can have a cleaner data set for reporting purposes. There's not so much on the zip. Well, actually, you can see here the location. It starts out zip, and then there's like a lat long for some of them. So the power of Power BI is that I can start shaping this data and cleaning it up right here without having to ask a business analyst or a data analyst to go in here with me. Part of that would be like going in here and creating a new column. So maybe my source data set, in this case, it's over the web, but I don't always have the ability to create new columns inside of my source systems. So what's nice about Power BI is it allows me to go in here and say, oh, you know what, I just want this number out of it. And there we go, I type that in. And the idea here is that it's going to try to figure out, well, okay, Michael just wants the latitude out of this field. And I'm going to rename it latitude. I'm going to hit OK. And now I have a new column that says latitude inside of here. Well, of course, we would need the longitude to go along with that. So I'm just going to go in here, type the 123.237.142, hit enter, and it's going to infer that for the rest of the rows that are in here. So I'm going to say longitude, hit OK. And now we have a new columns that say latitude and longitude. What's fun is that we could do that in any one of these places. So for instance, if there was a description or a column that was delimited, so you had colons or semicolons that was separating this, or dashes, something like that, I could absolutely do that. So I know this is not a great example for it, but reference number over here, you see that it's separated by a dash. I'm assuming this is probably to do with the year, so you can see -18 and 18. There's a correlation between that. I could create a new column off of the example that says I just want the 19 out of this, and it comes up with the logic behind what I'm looking for, and just automatically says, okay, creates a little formula that says, okay, just a 17, 18, 19. And I could call this the 2-digit year. Of course, I have a date column in here, so it's not really necessary, but I just want to show the point of this is the kind of shaping activities that you could do inside of Power BI without touching the source system, the source export, or anything else, right? It's a great place to have, as you see here, logic behind what I need to do to clean this data up. In this case, it's a pretty simple set of steps that are taking place, but let's say the source system does change. I have the ability to go in here and change the step that is going to be impacted by somebody upstream changing whatever that database might be, right? So if the delimiter changes from I don't know, from a null to something else, I can change that here. I've got all sorts of tools to transform the columns, to add the columns, to do whatever I need to make this source data fit what I need it to fit for my report.
Hey, Michael, can I jump in again?
Please.
This is really cool because what Michael, could you put yourself on mute for a minute? Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. So what's really cool here, and Michael just brought this point up, is that the steps that you're applying on the right allow Michael to, and as an example, to make changes exactly like he said, that doesn't impact the source. So you've got your data wherever you're pulling it in. Really, Power BI is overlaying these things and adding steps that you're building in the tool. So your data's, for everything he's done, remains untouched. You haven't done anything with that source. You're just manipulating it, and you'll create the sequence of events that allow you to transform the data you want to. I really wanted to drive that point home, Michael, and I know you were going there. I just wanted to add a little more to it.
Yeah, thank you. And it is a very powerful part of Power BI. It's called Power Query because this is actually built into Excel also. They moved it over to Excel, just this ability to do these query editing. And it's called a query because behind the scenes, there's actually all these steps that we're doing via clicking is actually all code. So one could, check this into some sort of a DevOps thing, be able to see what changes behind it. I just want you to see that it's not just it's a very powerful layer that makes the things that we want to do in Power BI possible, is with Power Query. Anyway, in this simple example, I don't have too much going on. I could merge this with more things. Maybe I had 1 month's worth of data. I wanted to add more months of, subsequent months. I could do that with joining queries and merging queries and everything else. In this case, I'm just going to hit close and apply on our simple example here. When you go through the tutorials, they'll have some great other examples where you could go through all these different steps, and the training that is available to the state is also going to cover those things. So whether you do that on self-paced training or self-paced learning, it's all there's some really good ways to do this. And I find that's the best way to learn how to do Power BI is to just take some of your data that you might need to explain in a report and just start applying Power BI to it. That's the fastest way for, well, actually for me, I learned it with my my Christmas budget. So what I just put a bunch of my nephews and nieces in a spreadsheet, and I just started trying to figure it out. Of course, they didn't have IRS and imposter in their terms, but it allowed me to, take something that I understood and apply this new tool towards it. Part of that, this tool is sure I could start relaying this onto a visualization or report, start painting with it, but I'm going to add a couple more pieces of logic to make this make more sense for my report. In particular, I don't have a count of all the different rows, and I don't have a count of a distinct count, right? So I might be able to count the rows, but there might be a case where there's an open for that reference number and then a closed. So I want to create a quick measure. In this case, I'm going to go into here to my measurement tool. I can create new measures. And if you're familiar with Excel, this is going to look very familiar to you, where just a little bit of a different syntax. So I'm going to say a distinct count of complaints equals, and I will now use my logic to create a distinct count formula on reference numbers. And there we go. I've got some, I forget what we call this, IntelliType features to help me create this syntax. And you'll see here there's now a new measure inside of my data model that was just created. It's got a little calculator on it because this is a bit of a calculated measure. It wasn't part of my data originally, but it's now being performed on it. So obviously there's simple things like distinct count, but there's also other capabilities of saying, hey, I need a new measure that you can create with all sorts of things. But where was it? I was looking for the one that helps me guide the measurement. Quick measure. Here we go. So this says, hey, what do we want to do with this? Well, maybe I need help creating an average or max per category, minimum per category, or filters or time intelligence. So there's some built-in logic in here to help create these types of measures if it's not already built into your data, nor if you don't know how to create it on your own, you can guide through this. So I'm not going to do this right now, but if I were to try to do this based off of distinct count of complaints by the category would be, I don't know, where is that? Closing. Where did I knew it was in here? Reference number, respond. I don't know, but it's a matter of just dragging and dropping it in there. Okay, so now that I do have my calculated measure for distinct count, I can go into my paint, my canvas, and I can do things like drop my distinct count of complaints here. And as you remember from that row when we looked at in Excel, yes, all 18,000. Well, actually one less. We trimmed it of that one empty, the error. So there's 18,280 complaints in here. Let's see. What if we want to look at this by complaint? Here, business type. That's what I wanted to look at. So I dragged the business type over there, and now you can see that all the different business types that were in categories are all here. I like reading this direction, so I'm going to turn it into a bar chart, and I can see that the biggest number of complaints here is fraudulent entity. Well, we want to look at that actually by digit year, so I'm going to bring in a little digit year here, and I'm going to turn this into what's called a slicer. So this bar chart, you saw how I turned it from column chart to bar chart by clicking a different visual. In this case, this right now is going to highlight it the way that I dragged it out there. I want to turn this into a little slicer, so I'm going to click on the slicer view. And then now I can look at, okay, I just want to focus on the ones that are from 2017 and now the ones from 2018. So there's just some cool ways that you can look at what they moved it. What did they move? Setting is moved to change format slicer. There's some things that change in here also. So, okay, cool. They turned it from a vertical list. I can do it to a drop down. So now I can just do a little drop down to clean in here. Anyway, the point I want to make here is that it's really fun actually to work with this data and get different perspectives on this data. So I might want to have a little, what is this, a card that tells me, all right, well, if I wanted to look at private party no jurisdiction, what does that look like? Oh, there's 614 complaints there. Collection agency scam calls, the 465 of those. Obviously, the richer your data is, the more rich your visualizations will be. But my point is that you can you extract so much out of it by just leveraging some of the built-in tools that we have out there. So this is a great one too. It says, hey, what if you just want to ask a question? So, hey, how many complaints did general government have? And I can hit enter, and oops, well, it didn't like that. How many complaints did general government have? How many? It's because complaints is not yet tied to the distinct count of complaints. Well, I can go in here and I can start cleaning up the synonym. I can create synonyms for what people might want to use to call out my columns. So this is important because sometimes our data doesn't have the best column names, like they're not really user-friendly, business-friendly. This gives it a place so you can start creating synonyms, you could start making it more interactive for your business users, translating it from the technical side of things that might come out of an Oracle database or SQL database and into something that's more usable for your executive or your business users. So anyway, you could, here, I'll go ahead and do one. So customer complaints, I'll make one for number. I have a new synonym, and it automatically created a bunch of other ones. So not just a number, but it covers the count, the term amount, those types of things. I can hit X. And so now if we ask our question, it says, how many complaints in general government? Of course, is it because I can't spell government? Yeah. Oh, it's because I'm trying to do this on the fly. That's why. So anyway, you would create the synonyms much better, and then it would respond back to with a visualization that makes sense. What's cool is also you could then create this as a visual. It says, I guess let's look at this one by city, top cities by distinct count of complaints. Well, I can hit this button and I could say turn this thing into a visual now that I didn't have to even understand our data fields. I didn't have to understand visualizations. I could just ask a question, and then maybe I want to see this as a donut chart. And then boom, I've got the visual I want. I usually just leave this here. As a matter of fact, I think I could just turn it into there we go, turn it into a standard visual. So there's multiple ways that you can come up with these visuals, and that's why I don't know if I'm able to convey this. I'm hoping I am. Ways that you can creatively create some great reports out of it. I'll make some more room here, just so that you could see. Number one, it's all interactive. You can control the interactivity so that some parts of these stay fixed. Also, you could change the way that it says, hey, look, if we don't want it to highlight, we'd rather it filter it, so that when I look at this report, when I click on something in here, I want it to actually filter this. So, okay, great. Now you'll see here, it's no longer a highlight of that donut chart. It shows me the donut chart based off of the whatever I'm clicking on here. I can nest this. So if I had multiple categories, I could start diving deeper into this. It's all sorts of stuff. And then I also I'll just bump it up a notch here. I might create multiple views of the same data type by using the idea of different spreadsheets, or in this case, different pages in this canvas, that I might then want to have a story that gets told. So if I want to dive deeper into this idea of a private party, I can analyze this further and dive into the story with some bookmarks and some storytelling tools that allow me to create whatever story I need to tell. Okay. Now, this is a quick glance out of it. I just wanted to show how easy it is to create one. I think the next piece that I want to move to is this idea of publishing it. Okay, so now that I have what I want out of the data that I want to create, I want to save this as my Power BI report for Oregon Bank. I save a local copy of it just like I would any document, any spreadsheet, and so on. But now I have the ability to then publish it. In this case, I'm going to publish it to my personal or not, my workspace, like sort of like my own little place where I can publish all sorts of my reports. It allows me to have personal Power BI reports that I might want to create for my own work day, but it also gives me a chance to then share this with others inside of my my work group. So you can see here, it's the same report. I just published it out there. It interacts the same, but now it's on the website. I'm using any HTML5 browser to do this. It allows me then to hit the file button and create a QR code. Maybe I want to share this with my colleagues, or I want to publish this out so that it's no longer in my workspace, but rather in a workspace that is a new workspace that is more enterprise grade, more work group grade. Okay. Anyway, just to give you some idea, some end to end how this works from a authoring perspective to then being able to share this with others, and hopefully that's giving you some quick perspective of how this tool is being used.
Thank you, Michael. I wanted to jump back in again and reiterate, for those in the executive branch of the state of Oregon, you guys have the government instance, or what we call G5, which affords you everything that Michael just showed. You have the ability to author. The tool's free, the desktop tool's free, but that ability to publish somewhere and then share your reports out, you have the license capability to do this today. And there's tools and resources to help you get there too. So in addition to what Michael showed us, if there's interest in education or to learn more, we definitely want to hear back from you, and we'd love to follow up with you. So hopefully that makes sense. Any questions or feedback on that topic or anything so far?
Abe, it looks like there was one question in the chat that I didn't see pop up when it came up, but they said they were already answered by the presentation. So
Yeah.
looks like another question just popped up. What about the cloud options, such as adding a Power BI tab in a Microsoft team?
It's a great question. It's as far as integrating that with the rest of the productivity tools, absolutely. So you can chat with it in Teams. Here, I'll move this over here. So you see that I can chat with this in Teams. I can embed this in Teams.
Michael, we lost your share.
Oh, sorry. Share.
No problem.
Screen. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. So there's a couple buttons here while you're in the web version, right, to be able to export directly to Excel or PowerPoint as an image or as a PDF. And yes, it can be integrated with Teams. So I could take this up into a Teams channel and just start bringing Abe into this and be able to say, hey, Abe, what do you think about this thing? Can we talk about this? And for whatever reason, this is probably locked up because of the way that I publish this out. It's probably got the wrong tags in it. But yeah, that's a great way to bring it up. And then once it's in Teams channel, you find yourself not having to jump back and forth between Power BI tabs or other things. It sort of just brings it all into one channel. So great question. And that's just one of the integration points I want to point out, but hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, and we had a couple other questions come through. The next one is, does G5 allow for premium licenses?
Yeah, I could take that one. So premium licenses are, there's user and capacity-based license capability. Those are add-ons beyond what you get. So Power BI Pro, again, allows you to share and collaborate and work within your organization. If you need those premium, let's say capacity, let's say that you needed to embed something or share something publicly, what we do is we actually add that enablement to your environment, and then that we afford you the capacity or the ability to share out. And if anyone has any follow-up on that or questions, please, if you want to come off mute or respond back. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I specifically kind of want to know is so there's the $20 uh a month fee for it, but I also see that there's a different server requirements for it. And I'm wondering if there's another cost other than the $20 a month, right? Or is the state already paid for that?
Shannon,
Like,
is
how
that
much
Shannon?
computation do we have? Yeah.
Yeah, Shannon. So if you, I can certainly follow up in your specific instance. If you want to share, you can hit me up privately, or we can certainly take that offline. But the state has not paid for premium capacity that doesn't have a purpose, if that makes sense. So the idea would be that Power BI Pro and what we're demoing today, the state has paid for that. You have the ability to share workspaces and be in this collaboration space. But if you do have some kind of premium capacity niche, let's say, for example, you wanted to have guaranteed compute for some thing that you're doing, well, maybe that's why you need a premium capacity, or maybe you need to share publicly out to the internet, and a premium capacity would be set up for that, so we can allow anonymous access. I'm just making up scenarios, but let's say your scenario hit one of those. We would add the right number of compute capability to be able to pull that off. And Shannon,
Yeah.
if that didn't
Yeah.
get to it, more than happy to take your scenario
Okay.
and share back.
Well, no, we actually have a number of scenarios where we were looking at it.
Okay.
But just I don't want to like portray to my boss it's only going to cost us $20 a month per user if there's an extra cost. And sometimes it's really hard with Microsoft to find out, that information if there's an extra cost for computation or storage. I don't think so for storage because it says we have like 100 terabytes, but like I'm concerned about like being charged for computation.
Shannon, yeah, and to your point, I mean, the people like myself do make careers out of making sure that we align the right needs and requirements together. I'd be more than happy to dive into that with you and understand more about your scenario. So, I mean, let's understand what kind of needs you're trying to pull off and what that maps to. Be happy to work something up with you.
Okay.
Make sure we get the right number of widgets, if you will.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Abe. And then one more question, if we're ready to tackle it. Stephanie's asking, sounds like where she works, they use Cognos BI, and she's wondering how that compares with Power BI, and are there advantages to using Power BI over Cognos BI?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say it's at the same level or like endpoint. So I don't know, there's some pluses and minuses, I think, to using either or both. I think of Power BI sort of as really good at the dynamic visualizations. All right, so if we want to create these dashboards and reports for that, I feel like Cognos is probably better at, I don't know, the paginated reports, the I don't know, the numbers that need to be out here and everything else. I think where the Microsoft stuff gets really powerful is not just on the data prep and all this, but there's just visuals everywhere. So there's like 25 of them there, but you can download or integrate just a bunch of other ones. And I know Cognos is doing their thing to add to that. It's just I just see so much momentum in this space. I mean, this used to be a list of I don't know, 100 of them. There's probably hundreds of them now for them. So anyway, I think the dynamic nature of Power BI, along with all the data prep, as well as the enterprise grade nature of it, sort of it's the trifecta of why I pick it over. Of course, I'm biased, but hopefully it answers your just hot take on Cognos versus Power BI.
I'd like to chime in there too. Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, and it does the Power BI run off a separate set of tables like we have data warehouse tables that Cognos BI runs off of? I was just curious about that.
Yeah, so that's sort of where I was, I had that slide that talked about connecting to those other data warehouses. So you could do a lot of this already built into Power BI, but absolutely, like there's a place where it connects to the rest of this stuff. So I think did Cognos get purchased recently? Because I think they fall in one of these.
I think it's IBM actually.
Yeah, it is. It's IBM.
Yeah. So I mean, however way that your Cognos is connecting to your data source today, Power BI would absolutely just, that's what I mean by level. That's where it would connect to that same data set. And as a matter of fact, probably leverage a lot of the queries that you've already built into Cognos as a sort of a translation of that.
Oh, okay.
Is that Stephanie?
Yes.
Stephanie, yeah, Abe Yoakum. So yeah, I would, in addition to what Michael's saying, right? When we think about how we use it, and maybe asking you a question, do you guys have a lot of tabular reporting, or are you using it for dynamic visualization? Can you tell us a little more about your scenario?
Well, we use it we have dashboards. There's manager reports that the managers use. So we have dashboards. We have the ad hoc package where you can create the reports. But, if you want to create your own specific customized reports, we also have canned reports that the users can generate on their own. So they're preset reports that were already made for specific needs. I don't know if that helps answer.
Yeah, I
mean,
think
we
so,
do have the
Stephanie,
manager dashboard has the columns and tabs and
Uh-huh.
graphs and things, of that nature.
Stephanie, do you guys interact quite a bit with the data? I mean, does it allow you to set, like what Michael was doing here in this demo, to be able to interact with the dashboard? And do you use Cognos that same way?
I know there's like certain things you can do up front. There's prompts that you can, like say you want to look at specific data on a worker and a team and that sort of thing. But as far as I know I missed the first I think the first 5-10 minutes of your presentation. So I'm not sure when you say interact, I mean, we don't go in and manipulate the dashboard to add additional pieces that we're needing to get information on, or, to customize the data from that main template, if that's what you mean.
That helps me a lot, Stephanie. Michael, I think what your point was here, I think where Power BI really shines is this ability to, we can bring in these data sets, we can relate them, we can show things, we can transform data, we can create visualizations that whoever you publish this to, they have the ability to interact with it, to ask questions real time and live, and that I think that sets Power BI apart from the others, in my mind. Michael, would you agree with that?
Yeah, that is huge, actually.
Yeah, totally. I'm sorry. I get kind of clicky on it when you guys are talking there, because it also sort of, Cognos is great, but, there's mobile layouts here, right? So that's what I was trying to show off here. Is like, especially when you're talking about an executive dashboard, there's, the faster we can get into their hands so they can ask the data. I have this scenario back when I was in government where we'd have to report on how many potholes, that my executive would be in front of a PR, a council meeting or something like that. I hate for them to have to go back and get the printout or whatever else, right? So I'd love to, in this case, I'm able to go in there and just create a mobile layout of this. Say, hey, look, whenever you need this, I'll give you a little place to create a dashboard to do this. And off your iPhone, just ask the question if you get of the report, if you get asked this in public, right? Especially of a hot topic. So that's sort of one of the many things that sort of separate it from the traditional BI tool. Let's see. Wow, man, I wish we had like 6 hours, because I could take it up. You guys might get bored by it. I did see. Thank you, Shannon, for saying challenge accepted. I do know about HEC's data. Yes, it probably, as we're doing at HEC, right, we're leveraging other things along with Power BI to make that data work. So yeah, thank you for accepting that challenge. We'll keep going with you on that. But I did want to just go make sure that you all knew, number one, how this stuff works, as well as how, the type of data that we can connect to. So to the question of, data warehouses. Yeah, you wouldn't want to import your entire data warehouse. If you already have a data warehouse, let's leverage that in a connection to that live data, right? Or a direct query where we can connect directly to that data warehouse, and that the visualizations on our report are merely performing those queries live against that data warehouse. So that compute is being performed at the right area, not just in the report, but rather it's taking advantage of all the great resources that are behind your data warehouses. So I like to just make sure you see the distinction between, a report that you might want to create that is enterprise grade for direct query, as you might already have with that Cognos. We point you this route versus one that you might want to, I don't know, evangelize a report or just explore some data, right? It's more of the word I'm looking for is escaping me right now, where you're just wanting to try stuff out, explore it with that data. That's where the import model works with this better versus something that's built a little bit more robust. That does not mean that an import one can't start an import and become a direct query. It's that matter of fact, that's where a lot of our, where we see a lot of data, government data go, is using something like Power BI to explore that data, explain it, and then suddenly it's like, oh, what would be great is if we had a data warehouse or something more robust to deal with that query for reporting purposes, but also for data science or advanced analytics, run R, run Python, those types of things against it. So anyway, I just want you to know as BAs that when you pick Power BI or you're prescribing Power BI for your use cases, that it really can cover you from all of the things on the spectrum of dealing with data, from the reporting as we've been describing on the end side, as well as the evolution to a more, I'll go past this piece, the scenario of going from a one-off connected data, transform and create, share that and consume, like I've been showing off, or becoming more collaborative, where okay, now we're going to be able to create an app for this, a Power BI app, that there's not really any more development of this. We just want to publish that out, and that we have view-only users versus folks that are going to collaborate on this with me on my work group. So I have about 6 more clicks on this that go through the next evolutions of this, but I just don't want to scare anyone off, right? You don't have to do any of the things on the right end of the spectrum about, creating this and modeling the data and then ultimately going to the Power BI. Like there's basically this concept of small team, large team, enterprise level. Like I guess I want to impress upon you that, yeah, you can get all these other capabilities of it. It does require a little bit more thought, right, before we go creating a Power BI mobile app or anything else. But that does not stop us from doing this, great thing right off the bat of the personal Power BI, connecting to data, and then ultimately, having what I need as a BA or what your users might need by exposing and surfacing up the data that's being sort of locked up right now. I think of it as the great liberator of data.
Absolutely.
I'm talking a little bit faster because I want to be cognizant of time, but let's see here. That might have spawned some more questions, and so we probably don't have time to talk in detail about all these different architectures, but it's again something that we could dive deeper into, as well as some of your IT administrators might already have some good governance, some plans around how using Power BI service in your organization might be in place. So I don't see any names that I recognize from our DHS OHA folks. But that might be something, Abe, that like Jake's team and others would be helpful in.
Yeah, great point, Michael.
All right.
Any other? And just for a time check, Tim, I think we have approximately 30 minutes. Is that about where we're at?
Correct. I just need a minute or two to close us out at the end.
Okay.
To get us out of here by 4:30.
Ah, shoot! I was thinking we were down at the bottom of the arrow. Okay, good. Well, then I will slow down a little bit, and make sure that you're aware of what we've been seeing so far has been that pattern of connecting to data, shaping that data, then publishing that data. There's so much more in terms of other use cases, so including this idea of workflow automation. So sure, the things that we're creating can be used as a consumption or consumed by a user, right? But it can also be leveraged or consumed by other things like a Power Automate. So for instance, if something, let's say a threshold is met inside of a report that, complaints have exceeded the number that can be open, that we've agreed to should be open by the governor, in any given month. Well, that could help trigger, right, a Power BI data-driven alert to either send an email or, perhaps, launch some other flow that would interject, so the idea about BI being sort of the end of this stream is no longer the case, right? We can leverage alerts and other things to help automate and bring other types of efficiencies and optimizations to your organization with other things in the Power platform. So again, it probably is something that you own. It's just a matter of stitching together, composing a solution that makes sense for you. What I see is a lot of folks start with, again, Power BI Desktop, Power BI Service, publishing this PBIX, but boy, it opens up a lot of other scenarios for doing other things. And if you as a BA have this portfolio of capabilities in mind, right? From, okay, well, here's what a user will typically do, that, you know, from starting out or prototyping, that's the word I was looking for earlier, prototyping with this data, it ends up becoming that catalyst, the start of a really cool solution, right? I'll go back to this first slide of ours that allows us to take analytics and evolve that into our process automation and applications development. Because inevitably, what happens is whenever we surface up this data, become more clean, and maybe your organization's different. I run into lots of orgs where that data isn't always the cleanest. You know, yours is probably, Oregon's, I know, is probably perfect, but you know, it's this place where it becomes opportunity to say, oh, if only we had an app that captured that data that we're missing out of that report, or oh, it should be great if we could enrich this data more by creating a form or a virtual agent that collected more of that data about our user interactions, our resident and citizen interactions. That is the sort of that great balance of having our analytics and our BI inform what we can do down the line of other things that we want to do for our citizens and residents and use cases. So Babe, I don't know if you have anything more to add on that of scenarios that you've seen in Oregon, or maybe just validate the fact that Oregon's data is all perfect. I know, but you know, that it's just one piece of the entire puzzle here, right?
It is, and Michael, you know, I think you bring up a really great point, and I think we're evolving to this now. We're living it, but you guys have, again, across the spectrum, you have the ability to interact with this platform and your other M365 products with some of these other tools, like Power Automate is available to you, or be able to leverage creating a Power App. So just imagine, you know, I think that last example that this example that Michael has here, just imagine other use cases where an event of data being collected or produced spawns another event to go act on it somehow. There's this really extensible platform to interact with information, to be made aware, to resolve, to follow up as a result of something that comes into the platform. So it's incredibly powerful. Certainly, probably another conversation with you at another time, but more than happy to follow up on how we can help you across the board.
Yeah, and then thank you, Abe. Also, I forgot to mention this. We did this for Washington. They don't call their group Bang, but in Washington, we did the similar event. We titled the session "Putting Lipstick on Your Data," but it was this idea that sure we can pretty up the data, we can make it more consumable, but I learned during that session last year that we can now embed Power Apps right inside of our report. So, you know, this is kind of known as write back in the technical term, where the report might be able to surface something out to us, but then we'd have an interface right there of a drop down list or a field update that goes back to Power App to update that data. So we had this one where it was salmon reporting in our streams, and it could tell us, okay, how many salmon did we count this quarter, and that it was an app that our field personnel from DNR or DFW could go out there and use to say, okay, well, how many did I count last week? So they had one console to see what it looked like, you know, seasonality speaking, but then also have a place right there so to do the counts, so that they're not having to jump back and forth. It was just one iPad or one Surface that they were able to use for this. So, yeah,
Michael. Yeah. So in that scenario, I'm imagining that I would have the ability to you know, I'm using summary information, or I'm getting demographics, and I have, let's call it a tabular interface, and I can add or modify or do things to records with the Power App that would then flow to update the reporting mechanisms and be an incredibly dynamic environment, right? To be able to go end to end and loop back and just have one place to do all this work. Is that am I close?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's one of the new features that have come up in the last couple of years that have really opened up more of this Power BI, because, you know, admittedly it came out as just a great visualization tool, but now it's become a big part of what you can do from a whole workflow for orgs. So yeah, great point. I was just trying to pull that up on the background, but it might be another session that we can have as far as diving deeper into that.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Any other questions, comments, or feedback, or?
Okay. So let's see about, those are the questions around how to store the data. Maybe won't be as big of a BA thing versus an IT thing. So I wanted to just make sure that you were informed of other things about Power BI. So for those that, again, own it, then, you know, this part is already covered, this idea of Power BI Pro in part of your G5 and M365. For those that don't, this is the list price. So, you know, of course, our resellers will be able to provide you with a more accurate pricing for wherever you're at. Now, again, I don't see too many BAs who, you know, need to make the decision on whether you do Power BI Premium. But a lot of this is done at the IT level, where they're saying, hey, the limits of Power BI Pro, which of course we have not touched in our demos that I've been showing off, right, where that would need to be unlocked by Power BI Premium. That usually ends up becoming this shared capacity idea. So I forget if who was asking that earlier about, well, you know, when do we need to pay for this? Well, a lot of times you just need to do, like, maybe I'll pull up that screen about, like, what are the limitations? Well, 10 gigabytes of data that you can store locally, or 1 gigabyte, I should say, of data that you can store locally if you're going to do some of that prototyping. That's all covered in the Power BI Pro side of things, and be able to share and consume that. That's all covered by Power BI Pro. It's only when we need to do this big data or big data management at an enterprise scale that we would need to tap into Power BI Premium. And pretty much ignore the Power BI embedded. That's usually when we're creating an application for our end users, or sorry, for our citizens, that we would need to do a Power BI embedded scenario. But anyway, the Power BI site where we talk about the website where we talk about all the scenarios, like if you just go to, no, not this one, Power BI, where you just look at the,
Yeah, Michael, while you're pulling that up, Shannon, that was you. You know, we'll certainly interact. I think you'll find that the model that we were just showing, yeah, this is actually what we were talking about here, where you've got I think in the prior screen, we just had the far right, the per capacity model that you see here for around $5,000, and then a per user model, right? So if you stay right there, Michael, the left column is what comes with your G5. So you wouldn't go and buy that. You own that if you're in the executive branch and you have G5. The things on the right, the $20 or the $5,000, that is something that would be in addition to. And then the scenario is, what's the better pricing model, or what is the right scenario? Do you add capacity that just gets added for everybody that uses that environment, or is there a user modality? Which one makes sense? Shannon, I know we'll follow up, but I think this is what you were gravitating to and what we want to follow up on.
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. Okay, we'll get to it. And then just when we talk about feature benefits, everything Michael showed today was very much the Power BI Pro. But if we wanted to unlock additional capability, again, fixed capacity, external access, and other features, that's where Premium comes in.
Yeah, that's I don't want to spend too much time on here, but I do want to point out that there's a documentation site that talks about all the differences between Premium and other places. As a matter of fact, while I'm here, there's some really good training for Power BI that is built into this. It's all free. This is a little different than what your ESI, your Enterprise Skills Initiative training would be. That's also available to the state. But if you just looked at Power BI, it would open up this idea of a role of somebody who wants to do who wants to do reports. And so, like, you can get to idea of a Power BI learning path for whatever you might want to do. So whether that's, whether that's to create just reports or become a data analyst or develop a Power Platform, you get to sort of start wherever you need to. and there's some good tutorials and ideas. So anything from the administration side of it to just, creating the reports or the visualizations of it. Please do make yourself aware of these different paths and free training for doing any of that. Okay. Let's see, where are we with our, going back to our presentation. So there are some other appendix slides that I have here to talk a little bit more detail about the direct query versus live connection. I'd actually want to open it up for any more questions and answers that we want to knock down to shape the rest of our conversation this afternoon. So please let me look at the chat. Are there any new ones here? Okay. I'd love to hear more about, well, I don't know. Tim, is there a chance that we could end the recording at this point?
Yeah, I think I could do that.
Okay.